about what kind of revolution would you like in Glasgow? This is hopefully the beginning of a series of debates that we'll do over the course of the year. And the idea behind that is to provide an opportunity for us to talk to our audiences and for you to talk to each other as well around themes that we're interested in.
And basically when Belinda asked me what revolution I would like to see in Glasgow, the first thing that came to my mind is end of child detention. It's like the child who's been taken away from them. You know, that childhood, you know, enjoying yourself and having a good time, you know, being like every other child. They couldn't have that life. It's just that fear. They were saying to me every time we hear a knock on the door, we'll hide, you know, under the table, thinking it was the immigration coming to take us. Who had the guts to explain to this 5-year-old, you're being locked up because the government thinks Uganda is safe for you to go back to, even though you've lived in the UK for 5 years, you know nothing about that country. You could die, you could be persecuted, your family could die, but you know what, it doesn't matter to us. Officially, children are not being sent to Dungavel detention centre anymore, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's great, you know, it's what I've been wanting, but I think something worse is going on. They're sending the kids now, the families who are going to be deported to a place called Cedars, which is in Coley in England, and basically it's a contract between the Home Office and Barnardo's. I don't know if you know Barnardo's, it's meant to be a children's charity, along with G4S, and G4S is I think the security for the jails and so on. So how can Barnardo's detain children?
I'm not all that fussed about the phrase revolution. Sometimes on the left people get caught up reform, revolution. I'm just going to call it change because it's about change, about changing from here to somewhere else. Social imagination is the driving force which causes all social change. We think imagination is a personal thing, an individual thing, but it's not. Imagination is a social thing. When we imagine something new, we imagine it from where we are. Most imagination is a reinvention in some form of where we begin. People say that the disillusionment with politics is a terrible effect of contemporary politics. It's not. It's the intention of contemporary politics. It's intentional to move people away from decisions and leave it to institutions and take these things away from us. It's one of the things I think that people have missed is just how corrosive the effect of anger in our society is. And that anger is absolutely justified and it's absolutely right because we have been commodified in the most awful sense that we are, who was it, someone said that it was one of the American writers, G.G. Ballard, was saying that we are to all intents and purposes, we're not citizens, we're farmed. We're farmed for the purposes of selling us stuff, and that is more or less right in modern society. We are farmed like cattle whose purpose it is to keep buying things so the institutions can thrive, not the people. And my firm belief is that what we have to do is create a social change by creating the right conditions for the kind of social change that we want. I don't want an angry revolution. I don't want another change which is born out of conflict and anger, because bluntly, all the change that comes from conflict and anger ends up in conflict and anger.
So that's 3,000 cyclists in the Meadows a couple of weeks ago. And you might think cycling is just a wee side issue, it's not really a big thing. But I'm kind of trying to argue that it's quite central to a great change. Could be a change in our cities and our countryside for the better. The thing is, the human frame has come in the last 100 years to be utterly degraded. We've evolved to hunt, to gather, to chase antelopes. It's interesting, the form of humanity, the form of the human frame is meant for running. And what's happened to us in the last 100 years, we've become more sedentary. We've stopped doing manual labour, we've stopped doing anything. And this is actually causing huge health problems. Cycling is an answer to a lot of the problems of Glasgow. We need to exercise the species. Cycling, active travel is one way to do this. In fact, we call it active travel. We can't even conceive of walking anymore, of doing things by ourselves. If people are cycling, they tend to spend more in local areas. So out of town supermarkets, the kind of way that urbanism has generally been changed in the last 30 years. Cyclists tend to go more to local shops, tend to spend locally, and local economies benefit. And I'm going to show you what Russia and Utrecht looks like. See, every person here, imagine the space they take up in an average car. So cycling is a cheap form of transport, but it needs infrastructure, it needs good design, and it needs changes in the law.
Well, I'd like to answer the question, what sort of revolution do we want in Glasgow? Well, in a nutshell, a full-blooded revolution against capital and the British state. So, actually, this is another point that Robin made, so we're almost having a debate. He calls it the imagination of the mind. I call it very much an ideological battle, and the ideological battle is, of course, to blow up the myth of the bourgeois utopia that suggests such things as the commodification of the earth's resources, of human beings, and unregulated mythological free markets, private home ownership, is somehow synonymous with individual liberty and social freedom. The point I'm trying to make here is that all ideas and tactics that we could potentially use, we have to learn, modify and adapt again, but they have a genealogy and an archaeology. It's like Slavoj Žižek said, you know, revolutions have to be made, they have to be remade and then remade again. And I'm very conscious we're in this continual feedback loop. If we had one revolution in Scotland that is perhaps immediately worth engaging with, it's the question of land ownership. It's quite extraordinary that the feudal laws over land in Scotland were only actually officially abolished in 2004, but the whole primogeniture system that has bequeathed 90% of land to Scotland to actually 2,500 individuals is quite extraordinary, and it's something, of course, no one wants to tackle. Have a look at that. Isn't that wonderful? Glasgow Harbour, designed for life. Who says you can't have it all? Well, the banks for a start. So what have we got in the building industry, specifically to do with well, we've got the instability and insecurity of the building industry that for 300 years has been prone to cycles of boom, slump, and at least 3 major crises in my own lifetime, and I'm into my 50s. About 52% of architects in Scotland are unemployed at the moment. The whole history, geographical history of capitalism is a history of uneven development and social and spatial inequality that is demonstrable, and we can see it every day in a city like this. The tendency to complete homogenisation of architecture, that is something that affects us all, I think. Very much to do with the fact that kind of building producers economise so as to maintain the rate of profit. There is no legislation that is forcing kind of like builders to kind of like think in any kind of new ways. And then, of course, we all have this, our favourite Glasgow strike. Well, this is the rent strike. How about a mortgage payers' strike? Can you imagine a mortgage payers' strike? Collectively, ladies and gentlemen, let's stop paying our mortgages. Now, how about that for a kind of like interesting piece of middle-class solidarity? This is storming the Winter Palace. After they stormed the Winter Palace in the 1917 revolution, they reenacted the storming of the Winter Palace on a daily basis for about 5 years. That's the room. It didn't happen quite that often. And these were spontaneous theatre productions out in the street. And you'll see the stage set is a 3-dimensional kind of version of a Malevich painting. Well, imagine that in George Square. Rather good. So the city is recast as an experimental laboratory where we test different things, test their ecological footprint and their adaptability. Well, of course, all these experiments, and there are many, many more of them, came to an end very quickly at the end of the 1920s. The important thing is these ideas exist and they're there for us to go and reclaim, rethink and reinterpret for the future.
I'm an architect and we fall into that 52% that Jonathan's been talking about, and consequently we've got time in our hands, so we've started trying to imagine projects that probably wouldn't have happened a few years ago, and it's been a really, really positive thing because it's made it engage with people, find out what's going on, why things aren't working, why money's being spent needlessly on things. And locally in Shields, where I live, we found that we can't safely get to town by walking or cycling, and we've tried to home in on a specific local need, and through discussion with some local people in the last 2 weeks we've come up with the idea that We need to have a safe route of passage from Queen's Park to the river. Simple little revolution that would change all of our lives. And
like a breathing experience.
We talked about the LET systems where people can use their skills and share them, exchange maybe not directly with another person, but people having different skills and using a different form of currency so that you're not having to use money. But if people can't get work, at least they can use the skills that they have, because everyone has got some kind of skill and ability, and there are too few people think, well, I can't get a job. Well, in this kind of system, people can use their skills.
And a return almost to what we would know as the old Glasgow or Jock Tamson's Bairns type phrase, which is everybody is everybody is everybody, and so bringing together of communities.
We have what, as I said, I promised you at the very beginning that we had a gift for you, and we'd like each of you to have one of these. It's a seed bomb, and we'd like to take one and plant it. And of course, if you attach your manifesto to it, it'll grow into a beautiful flower, and just remind you of the promise that you made in the room. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kim Scott, and what I've highlighted as my revolution for Glasgow is that I would like to see a whole mixture of different things that are all happening at this present moment coming together. And these would include certain things like community gardens, positive money system, permaculture, equal income systems for unemployed people within the benefit system, where they would actually state what their level of income they require to give them a decent level so they can get into employment a lot faster than what the system we have already affords them.
My name's Colin Buchanan. I've been involved in politics for, well, quite a large part of my life, one way or other. I've been involved in anti-war activity in the Occupy movement. The point I wanted to make tonight is that, we all agree it's a mess and that something has to be done.
For people to get together in their communities, to get them away from their TVs and see the power of people working collectively.